Hello and welcome to the Election Corner on One Man Think Tank. This time I just want to briefly talk to you about the massive early voting turnout that's been occurring in the states, namely key swing states such as Texas, Florida, Georgia, Michigan, and Wisconsin, with notable nods to South Carolina, Iowa, and Maine. To give you an idea, the number of ballots cast currently is stunning. To give you an idea, in Wisconsin, there have been more ballots cast in this election, in this early voting, with 3 weeks left to go, than there were in the entirety of the early voting period back in 2016. Michigan didn't have it, so naturally there was no early voting there. But it is truly stunning what's been going on, and I want to explain what the initial stats are and what this means for the future, because for some reason people are trying to portray this as a very pessimistic thing for the Democrats. Sorry, it's rather warm in here and I'm wearing a jacket. Give me a moment. There we go. A very pessimistic thing for the Democrats, when in reality, this is probably some of the best news they could have asked for about where the election's going. So, let's start off by using the best example state for all of this, Texas. Texas, as you can see, has the current amount of early/mail-in ballots cast in Texas compared to the 2016 total is 18.4%. So 18.4, so even if we only hit 2016 numbers, there are only roughly 81.5% of the ballots to go. Texas has only been allowing early voting, I believe, for 3 days. 4 days. Sorry, I think they started Monday. On the first day, they cast 1 million ballots. Texas's total vote in 2016 was 9 million. 1/9 of the ballots cast. If Texas at all maintains some level of this, we could see 50% of the ballots cast before Election Day, and this only continues to snowball in other states. So Michigan and Wisconsin have been going on for about 2 weeks now. I think Wisconsin a little bit longer than Michigan. But as you can see, they're both at about 26%. This is only going to snowball further because, to give, like I said, from Wisconsin, it's far and away past it, but we need to look at the exact percentage of ballots turned in and who they're for. 55%, last I checked, were for the Democratic Party, 28% for the Republicans, and about 22% were independents. I might be wrong about that, and independents may now be a little bit higher and Republicans a bit lower. But even if we assume the independents are perfectly split evenly between the two parties, despite multiple indications that they are actually biased towards the Democrats, or favorable, not biased, towards the Democrats, that means Democrats are holding about 2/3 of the vote in all of these states, in Wisconsin, in Michigan, in Texas. And also, important note from Texas, from Harris County, 22%. And Harris County is one of the biggest counties in the state. 22% of the ballots cast were new ballots, first-time voters. Those are terrifying numbers to the Republican Party. Absolutely horrifying. They do the worst with new voters. Like, you break it down by any group, whether it's age group, race, religion, part of the country, the worst category Republicans do have one of those words is new voters. And if this continues, if these trends continue across the country, we're looking at potential that by Election Day, half the ballots have been cast, 2/3 of them being for the various Democratic candidates at the statewide level, for the presidency, for the Senate, possibly for the House districts, but we'll stick with statewide while we've got statewide pulled up. That's really bad news for the Republicans, and now I'll explain why. So there are I'll actually discuss the 3 possible patterns we'll see from this. So first is the usual pattern. Early voting starts, it's a slight increase across the weeks, and then election day and a big spike, because a lot of in-person ballots. There's the second model, which we haven't really seen, which is the neutral model. Starts off medium, maintains medium, election day spike. And then the final model starts off big with a spike, decreases, 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 election day spike. Now, what many people are assuming, and this is a very bold thing to assume, especially given the fact we have states like Wisconsin and Michigan who have been voting for a lot longer to kind of give us a trend, is, especially after Texas with its 1 million votes, is we're in that third scenario. Big spike, decrease, big spike. In my opinion, we're actually headed to big spike, slight decrease, steady, 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 big spike. So inherently, people are going to be automatically assuming we're just going to see a constant decrease of votes until election day, which I don't believe will be the case. I think we're going to see a slight decrease after the first days, and then steady until election day. So inherently, bad for Republicans. This means a high turnout election. If you don't know why that's bad for Republicans, just ask yourself the question, why do they rely on voter suppression? Or rather, which party relies on voter suppression, and you know which party does not benefit from high turnout. But let's go further into the numbers. Another argument I've heard is, well, right now Democrats are just really excited, so there's going to be high turnout early on, but on election day it's just going to be loads of Republicans turning out, streaming in, evening out the polls, and all of a sudden Texas is red, and oh, Michigan will be super competitive, all that jazz. That is a inherently not incorrect assumption. Democrats are more excited. That's what this indicates. That's the key takeaway here. Democrats are more excited to vote than Republicans. What that doesn't mean is, oh, well, Democrats are going to be notoriously low on election day. Polling, especially national polling, has come across with the averages of about 60 to 70% of Democrats are going to vote earlier in person, while only 40% of Republicans will. The fact that the numbers we're seeing for turned-in ballots heavily favors the Democrats over Republicans indicates that 40% of Republicans say, well, I'm going to vote early in person or absentee, might be lower. It might be depressed, which is not good for the Republican Party. So that's inherent issue one. Assuming Republicans are as excited to vote as Democrats, they're just all going to vote on election day. If Republicans only get 20% out of their 40% expected turnout rate for early absentee, that's 20% they may not get back on election day. And 20% could throw, even if it's just of the Republican portion of the populace, could cost them multiple states this election. And I mean like Ohio, Georgia, Florida type states, even Texas. The next assumption that comes of this that I think is really incorrect is Democrats will all vote in like the first 3 days and then not show up. We're talking 20s right now of people who've turned in. The biggest state is Vermont with 35% right now. Plenty of people have yet to vote, and many will still probably vote on election day. So we're looking at people will turn out on election day as well. It's not like only Democrats get 6 weeks to vote and then the Republicans get a day to even the score. Democrats get to vote on that day too. Will it be smaller than expected? Yes. Will it be enough to cost the Democrats the election? Probably not. It hasn't been in previous years. We're just seeing an extreme change in the turnout. Plus, for the first time, what might be a high excitement Democratic turnout election with high opportunities, many opportunities to vote by mail that weren't previously there. Like I said, in 2016, Michigan couldn't vote by mail, and most of Texas couldn't do early or mail-in voting. So that's a big factor here. Another issue with the Republicans will just turn out on election day is in many of these red states, such as Ohio, Georgia, Florida, and Texas, namely those last three, Republicans have done a lot of work, and I mean a lot of work, to make it really hard to vote on election day. Meaning, if the Democrats have already gotten a majority of their votes in, and then the Republicans show up to vote, and then there's a bunch of voter suppression, long lines, with a less excited group, the Republicans go home, costing them their own seats. They're shooting themselves in the foot. And lastly, and this is really important because no one's thinking in this third dimension, or no one's posted a really good article about this third dimension that people don't seem to be considering. Let's say a week before the election, states like Texas, Florida, and Michigan and Wisconsin are about 40 some odd percent. That holds true with what we've been seeing. And it's still 2/3 to the Democratic Party, roughly. That means the Democrats have gotten a lot of their core voters out to vote. That means the money they'd normally use in their traditional get-out-the-vote campaigns can now be directed to areas they wouldn't normally dictate. So, let's say, if they get a lot of Harris County to turn out, they can turn and maybe try and get more of Houston, or, he says, really hoping he didn't just screw up and Harris County is Houston. I'll do one I know it's not. San Antonio. San Antonio, El Paso, Corpus Christi, areas they don't normally focus on in order to turn out the vote, especially Latino areas, really driving the get out to vote numbers because they know they've already gotten most of their core people out to vote and can now focus on more, for lack of a better term, either less traditional groups or more historically non-voters, especially in some states like Michigan, where now they've got same-day voter registration, so people can still just show up to the polls, register to vote, and then vote. This is going to be a big deal. Like, if in so many of these swing states, especially, watch my presidential election prediction if you want to know all the swing states, but essentially, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Florida, Georgia, Ohio, and Texas, with Iowa and Arizona also being there. If Democrats are going, oh, we're doing really well in the early voting in these states, that means our current methods are working, plus we got these massive war chests, that means we can focus on get-out-to-vote efforts for Election Day, which could cause a second Democratic spike that would come unexpectedly. Not to mention, if you already know where a majority of ballots are coming from before Election Day, and it allows for corrections on those ballots too, if there's a mistake or if a ballot gets rejected, people can submit a second one to make up for it, assuming they know there was a mistake. Democrats could be like, okay, well, looking at the polling statistics, we're not doing as well in Ohio as we thought we were, but we're doing really well in Georgia, Florida, and Texas. Let's take some of our Ohio money, and let's say they're also not doing as well in Iowa. Let's take some of that money and push it into these states, while the Republicans have to scramble like chickens with their heads cut off and go, we still need to spend money everywhere with a smaller war chest. Meaning, I know there's going to be a lot of articles out saying how this is somehow a secret way to favor the Republicans, and we shouldn't pay too much attention to these. But the conclusions you can draw from here are not good conclusions for the Republican Party. So, with all that being said, if you like the video, click the like button and also subscribe and click the notification bell so you can be alerted when new content comes out. If you have any opinions on this or any more local knowledge that I don't have, because of course I don't live in all 50 states, I can only speak for what I see in my neighborhoods, please comment down below, say what you're seeing, say what you're thinking about it. We can't base all of our election predictions on eyewitness testimony, but it could play a key role in telling us what the ground looks like, as well as excitement. And also, if you want to hear more from me outside of YouTube, I do have a Twitter, OneManThinkTan1, the Roman numeral, link in the description. But otherwise, and most importantly, have a wonderful day.